Hello, friends, and welcome back to Spaces Between. It's been a minute for sure. I know in my last couple of episodes, I was talking about how I was going to continue on the topic of love and opening our hearts and compassion. But interestingly enough, the interviews that I had set up and the books that I was reading, I actually recently went into my own personal deep dive of really finding the love in myself and for others in my life. So this is definitely the most important episode I think that, I've ever released. Probably because this is the deepest level of work I've ever done on myself. And I've done, if you've listened or followed me at all on Spaces Between, I've done years of therapy, years. I've done EMDR. I've gone to workshops with intuitives. I've worked with intuitives. I've done hypnosis. You name it, I've done it. And this was a new venture for me to do a guided MDMA session. And there was a part of me, the skeptic that lived in me, that was going, like when I was younger and I was a wild partier, I did fucking ecstasy and I did things that, were supposed to expand my heart, and it's not even in the same playing field. It's not even close. And I really want to make this disclaimer before I dive deeper into all of this material that this medicine is not for everyone. And I really want to say that with caution because, I think individuals in sobriety, individuals with history of extreme mental illness or schizophrenia, bipolar, things that could really potentially, for lack of better words, how do I want to say this? Be more fragmenting than actually bringing you the experience of wholeness and love and forgiveness and being able to access areas of trauma. Really, that what I would say my years of therapy, my years of deep work, other medicine work that has brought me to this point that I was able to really withstand it. And I was really able to be with the medicine, whereas I don't think that that is the case for all people. And I say that with, I hope, there's zero ego behind that, but caution. I think there's a real burgeoning world right now of psychedelics and plant medicine, and for very, very, very good reason. Collectively and individually, we need to heal. There is no doubt. That's something that I wrote in one of my past podcasts was, we will not know peace until we know peace in our hearts. And I'm going to cry because I really get it now. I really, really get it in my body, in my heart, in my spirit. Every cell in me now truly understands what it means to embody love. And yes, you guys might have tears throughout this episode. Yeah, whereas I think for so many years, I was in a state of trying to figure it out. I'm both a Virgo with some control issues. I'm extremely analytical, very much stay in the cerebral. I have read a bazillion books, and through all of my research and all of my therapy and all of my investigating, I wasn't truly landing in my heart, which is the biggest difference of the space that I just went into. Was it was entirely about re-experiencing traumas and imprints in my life where I needed to revisit those and hold those with compassion and forgiveness and love. And that comes from the space of the heart, not from the space of the mind. And I'm incredibly clear on that right now. So you might be wondering, well, what brought me to want to do this deep dive? And really, I would say becoming a mother. In the episodes before that I've talked about, nothing has brought about my shadow material, nothing, as as deeply as becoming a mom. Like nothing. Yes, my relationship with Jonas and the 13 years that we've been together. Oh, yeah. Has that, been shining a light on both of our shadow material? Absolutely. But really going through that portal of birth and, the grief of who I was and, this newer version of myself I was really grappling with, and this newer version of my life and this soul that I was doing a dance with, which, was just, it wasn't him, necessarily like him triggering the shit out of me. It was just these spaces that lived in my body that were old, that were truly from my father, from my mother, from their parents, from their parents' parents, that were getting lit up in me as I was in this new space of being a mother. So I knew that I owed it both to my son and to my partner Jonas, because we had flared up in a way that we were just like, and I don't think enough parents really truly talk about this. And I don't think that this happens to everybody, but if you are a more aware human, and I don't mean to sound like a prick when I say that, but if you're just kind of aware of your stuff and you're aware that more is coming to the surface, yeah, it was just very clear to me that I needed to go in and I needed to really deeply heal some things so I could show up for my partnership and being a mother in a more present, loving, and with a nervous system that was more slowed down. Because I think many moms can relate to, in the first year, it's like your nervous system just gets fucking blown open. You have a screaming baby, you're sleep deprived, just everything. Everything is so different. Your hormones are dropping. There's so much going on. So anyways, so I decided that 16 months later, it was appropriate for me. I'm not breastfeeding, the whole thing. And I decided that this was the right medicine for me to work with. And now some people in the new age world, people outside of it will kind of joke and be like, haha, MDMA medicine. Well, I'm going to say truly, after experiencing this, it is medicine. It's medicine for your mind, heart, spirit. Physically, I feel like I've gone through a total recalibration, and that has been reflected to me back from my partner and from my son. So I've had experiences with them in the last week, yeah, that again have blown my mind, that the depths that this, medicine really worked at some core wounding and spaces that, were not skillful in my life. And so taking full ownership of that. So now I'm going to go into my experience, because I think that's really important for all of you to hear, because I just so deeply want to share this. Was I nervous? Of course. I have control issues. As much as I used to be a hard partier, and, I even had some pretty large addictive tendencies in me. It's in my family system. And I've gone far with drugs and different things. I was nervous about this on a different level, because I was really nervous about, where this medicine was going to take me, what I was going to see, what traumas I was going to revisit. Would I be able to handle it? Would it really be as soft and gentle as the women guiding me were telling me that it was going to be? And trusting that. So I would say the first, the saying goes, when you sign up for plant medicine or, any of these kind of psychedelics or different medicines, that the work in your energy field, like things start coming to you before you actually go into ceremony. And this couldn't be more true. So, before, I would say before doing this, I had one of the harder months that I've had in a really, really, really long time. Even to the point where part of me, I just thought, okay, this is not the right time. Like I should let go of this. This could be dysregulating. But I just kept feeling this guiding. I kept feeling this pushing of like, no, the timing is right for this. But I felt like my world was literally just exploding on me. And I think Jonas and I went through a situation, which I'm not going to go into, but we went through a situation that we both went, wow, like we're hitting a real peak of dysfunction or, but we saw it outside of ourselves. It actually wasn't in the relationship. It was something that happened outside of us. But okay, so I'm going to stay on track. So I was nervous. I did a lot of things to prep, a lot of things to clear my system, what I was eating, what I was drinking. I no longer drink alcohol. I've lowered my intake with caffeine, but, caffeine completely I got rid of. And, just kind of doing a full overview of what I was absorbing in my life, which I think that most of us are not very conscious of, what we're absorbing online. You've probably heard me talk about this in this podcast, but things that we put on our body, people, energies, all of it, because we're sometimes not so sensitive to some of these things that we just are like, yeah, I'm going to eat this thing or I'm going to watch this movie. And we're not going to really think that it has an impact on us. And they do. So, that's one of the things before you prep for these deep dives is clearing what I would say was the felt sense for me. You're clearing your energy field. You're clearing your body. You're making space for the medicine to enter. So I felt really good by the actual day that I was going in. I was like, all right, I'm ready for this. So I went in and I want to stay away from like all tiny details. Some things that I want to say for anybody listening to this and anybody interested, you need to work with the most skillful practitioners. There is no doubt in my mind. And this is not a podcast. I'm not going to give info, where you find people, this, and that. This is really just about the experience that I hope the heart experience is shared with you. But if any of you have read Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, set and setting with psychedelics is everything. So don't ever, and I say this with so much love. That sounded like a little bit of a harsh mom. Don't you ever, but really, do not sit with people or a person, whether it's clinical, non-clinical, that there is no feeling of safety or a reference point that either people have or haven't gone, have gone and have had safe, contained, beautiful experiences. So I just want to say that. Set and setting. I was surrounded by incredibly beautiful land that I think added to my experience deeply. There was medicine in that versus I think the clinical settings can be very containing and beautiful for people that want to do it that way. And I even looked into that, but that didn't feel right for me. So I think it's really about trusting yourself, which that's something I want to go into. So trust became a massive theme for me. Before going into the ceremony, during the ceremony, and post. So really, really, really trusting myself, really trusting my intuition, and establishing that trust with the women leading me. So, okay, going into the ceremony. So for me, there was an element of ritual, which I feel was very, very important. And the women called in the elements. And so water, earth, air, fire. There were different offerings to me and different clearings. And we really cleared the space and cleared myself. And, and then I dropped in. So, that nervousness came back as I looked at both of them and I said, okay, so I'm just going to lay here blindfolded and they said, yeah, we're going to be right here with you. And just, you have a meditation practice, Gina, just meditate, drop in, relax. You'll feel the medicine come on. Do not hesitate to ask us for anything. This was another huge piece for me. So I'm going to draw themes. And this is not about creating something that, these are going to be the themes if you were to journey, but these were the themes that came up for me. So first theme was trust. Second theme was really asking for what I need. So deep within the feminine wounding, we have largely been raised as caretakers and people pleasers and nurturers. And it's very difficult for women to receive. I cannot even articulate how difficult it was for me to receive until I really allowed myself in this ceremony to receive. And, again, these very deep women who were very in tune, I think could feel that in me. And also with them understanding and doing the deep work that they've done in themselves, understanding the feminine wounding. And so really reminding me, please ask for what you need, Gina. So then, I laid down and I had randomly on my Spotify, this song kept playing for me, which was Release Control and Let the Love Heal You. And so I just really was letting that marinate through my whole system and just, okay, Gina, release control, let the love heal you. And so I did. So I started doing a mantra and I just started repeating that to myself. And I really started relaxing. And the only moment that I felt a bit of overwhelm was when the medicine came on and I really started to feel, this kind of like warm, tingling sensation in my body, kind of waves coming up in my body. But again, nothing that I had ever experienced in my youth when I partied. Nothing. So that for me was like, all right, I'm going to drop in. This is different. This is nothing like I've ever experienced. So I just allowed, and that's another key theme that came up, is as humans, how often do we actually allow, how to release the control, to release expectations, to truly surrender. So I just surrendered in the deepest space that I've ever gone. And what unfolded was a pretty magical carpet ride of, and I say this lightly and with levity because that was another key theme that came in for me. And I've talked about this in the podcast. In our healing journey, we have to remember levity. And so, when I say the magic carpet ride, yes, did I go down some deep spaces of trauma and uncomfortable areas? Absolutely. And yeah, some of that was not funny or fun stuff. But anyways, I'm not going to digress too much on the levity. That's a piece maybe that I'll circle back to later. So what happened in the beginning was really I was shown the childhoods from both of my parents, which was just, when I say profound, I'm probably going to abuse that word, to really be able to witness where they were not met, where they were not seen, where they were not held, and then what that created for me and what that created for my brother. And that wounding, which then was deeply projected onto us. And Dad, if you're listening to this, all of if you've been listening to my podcast, my mother's no longer alive. Dad, I want you to know that the deepest forgiveness and space is held for all of this. Again, I don't have words. So as I talk about all of these things, I do want to be mindful, though, of any of my family members or friends or anyone listening. But yeah, so I went into all of these old spaces that were held in my body, which talk therapy was missing. And again, I'm not going to bash talk therapy because I still, in future days would use talk therapy as a container for sure. But I was able to access these traumas in such a deep, again, cellular, where it was held in my body, where it was deeply stored in me. So I was just shown all these different spaces, both with my parents and then these themes in my life that I've just been grappling with up until 42 years old. Okay, so I'm going to give you my themes. One being good enough, which I now very much understand and hold with compassion the roots of my not good enoughness. And there were certain dynamics that were then created from my parents with my brother and I, which were unskillful, I would say, on their behalf. And I say that lovingly, to reinforce a feeling both in myself and even in him from each different parent of not really feeling good enough and feeling kind of like second tier. So I've carried this in me for my whole life. And I've always wondered, and I think in my intimate relationships with men, I've, for lack of better words, always been a big firecracker. That's like a very Buddhist way of, yes, saying I can hit level 10 pretty quickly. And my relationships with men have had a level of volatility. And I've never quite understood why. And I always used to connect it to actually my mother's passing. That wasn't really the key. The key was this feeling of not good enoughness and this feeling of being second tiered. So I would push people and I would really bump up against their edges. And the edge was, am I number one to you? Like, am I really good enough? And can you hold that space for me? And then ultimately what I would do is leave the men and just say, well, you're not good enough for me. So I'm fucking out. I'm done. And there was like more dynamics. There was their 50%. There was my 50% of why the relationships ended. But I now really, really understand my 50%. So something else that came up in ceremony was we all as humans are the temperature dial or gauge. So we walk into a room, we have a conversation with people, we bring a certain energy and we need to take more ownership of that. What we bring into our workspaces, our family life, our relationships, are you turning it towards the dial of reactivity and anger and, when I think of the dial, I think of like hot, like a red. Or are you bringing it more to the cool? And are you bringing a bit more equanimity? Or are you bringing more heart space, more love, more gentleness? And there's even kind of this middle color for me, which is neutrality. What level of neutrality do you bring to spaces? So I'm going to back up. So I'm going into all of these deep spaces of my parents' childhood trauma, then my own, and how that's impacted my intimate relationships, how that has impacted me as a mother. And what I want to say is one of the biggest things in this whole experience was how I was able to hold it all with love. I was able to feel also, right? We've all heard the expression, you can't heal what you don't feel. So I really felt these spaces. I felt the pain in my parents. I felt the pain and the confusion of them as younger parents. I felt the pain in them trying to hold. I'm going to cry. Dad, I know you're going to listen to this. I felt the pain of them wanting the relationship to work, but it didn't, right? So there was so much pain being projected back and forth. So that's another theme that I want to bring up. I have never in my life, again, I've read a lot of books. I'm repetitive about that. I just love books. And I've read so much shit. And it's probably because I've been, in an analytical, again, cerebral cerebral way, trying to figure out like really projection, right? But we all do it, and we do it like all day, every day. we like barf on each other. There's so much projective pain going on in the world. And again, I say this compassionately, and a bit of a lack of ownership. So something my partner said to me this morning actually was, he said, Gina, this version of you, like, I can really see my part. Like, you're not saying anything to me. You're not pointing out anymore. You're not like, you're doing this, Jonas, or, fuck you for that. He's like, you're sort of, he didn't use the word silence, but I guess just the energy, right? Of, I accept him as who he is, and he needs to work on his 50%, but also I'm really taking ownership of what I bring. And so the energy that I've been bringing this last week is very different. And he has said to me, he's like, that part of me that wants to be reactive or angry, like, I can't hook into anything because you're not willing to go there energetically. So it's shifting him. So again, I want to go back to that temperature gauge. We all raise the temperature in everything. So I don't want to beat things down too much, but just really bringing that point to a head. It's been so beautiful for me to witness also the shift in my partner. And it's only a weekend. And, I had some deep hesitation about, I didn't write this episode as I'm just speaking this out right now, wanting to record this so soon after such a big, deep experience. And that question of, well, have I integrated it all? And that was a lot of processing, and that was a lot of information. And my partner and I are still integrating. But I go back to something I talked about in the beginning, which is trust. So I am trusting myself. I am trusting the process. And I'm going to go into the space, which is the whole reason I started Spaces Between, something else that was deeply illuminated for me. And this might be very uncomfortable for some people to hear. The whole title, Spaces Between, is about wanting to guide people back home. Okay, so someone like Ram Dass, many other people have said, right? We walk each other home, and home is that centerpiece of our inner essence, whatever you want to call it, the cosmos, the universe, the greater good. I don't care, and I don't think the universe gives a shit. However we want to put these things. And I also think in the spiritual world, there's kind of a weird thing going on of a little bit too much proselytizing and kind of guru, let me tell you all the ways. You know the way. And that's why I started this podcast. And that's why I wanted to go do this deep dive. As I'm saying it out loud, I'm having this kind of illumination for myself. The knowing is within you. But sometimes we do need these things in life. It doesn't have to be MDMA. It doesn't have to be plant medicine. It doesn't have to be psychotherapy. But I do believe as humans, we do need assistance, and we need community in healing some of this deep wounding and this really deep trauma. So I'm feeling like I'm going to be coming to an end soon. I'm just going to take a beat and a breath for a moment. Yeah, because I just really want to hit on some of the biggest themes, which, we all have things to heal. And, we all need to do it compassionately and with love. And my experience in this, oh, wow, I just so believe in our ripple effect out in the world, so I think that's really all that I feel like those are the big, sort of aha moments, or whatever you want to call them, illuminations, spaces of growth, spaces between. I had to. Yeah, but ultimately, how do we come back home to ourselves? How do we come back home to our heart? Your heart is the space that you should be making decisions from. Your heart is your intuitive zone. So interesting that I read Dr. Nicole LaPera's book, Be the Love You Seek, right before this. And what a wise woman, what a gift to the world she is, that really coming back into that space of the heart and doing and engaging in practices that open up your heart. So I think that's all that I want to say. And just, I hope that this episode gave you some medicine and maybe gave you some space to just take a breath, slow down, and reflect on, we are all works in progress, and we all need to have a little bit more patience for one another and a lot less judgment. So that was something that was clear to me in my ceremony. I think we all walk around with a lot of judgment. Again, this you against me versus the collective we. We are deeply, deeply interconnected, and we are deeply interdependent on one another, not in a dependent way, but or codependent rather. So yes, thank you for listening, and sending you love, 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 and just grace to yourself and presence in all the spaces of life. All right. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.